cold hills, grey mist. The Scottish Highlands, one of the loneliest places in Europe. The desolate wilderness of rock and heather, providing refuge for many rare wild creatures. And one bird in particular, a very special bird, one of the world's most spectacular hunters. Evolution has set the osprey in a class of its own, equipped it with a unique anatomy for supremacy in its watery world. 5-foot wingspan, exceptional eyesight. From its sickle beak to its strong legs and raking talons, everything about it is designed for a purpose. The only bird of prey in the world to feed exclusively on live fish. The osprey is a bird of all climates, at home in every continent, from the Arctic to the equator. But this is Britain's empty quarter. It's late winter, and the ice-armored lochs are still, as yet, devoid of life. But the pull of the osprey's ancestral breeding haunts cannot be denied. Already the mountain hares are losing their winter camouflage. Spring is coming, and a wild music rings out over the piebald hills. Pinkfoot and grey-lag geese, northward bound for the brief Arctic summer. It's a time of change, of ebb and flow between the seasons, a time of movement and great migrations, as it has been since the Ice Age shaped these hills. For centuries, these lonely lochs were the home of ospreys. Yet even here they were cruelly persecuted, and by 1910 the last eyrie stood empty. For nearly 50 years Scotland waited. It seemed they were gone forever, until one day a shrill cry announced the osprey was back. The nest sites are traditional, passed on from generation to generation. But the male osprey immediately stakes out his territory, brandishing a fish as he goes through his dashing display flight. The sky dance of the male osprey also serves another purpose. Ospreys usually pair for life, but his mate may have died on the grueling journey north. So the call serves to attract other females as it echoes through the snow-covered mountains. The Highland thaw is only just beginning, but ospreys need a complete spring and summer to raise a family. They are one of the first migrants to arrive, but if cold weather should delay the female, breeding could be seriously affected. All the male can do is wait patiently. as the osprey keeps his solitary vigil, other birds have already begun their breeding cycle, and the cold, lock-eyed dawns echo to the strange sounds of squabbling blackcock. The blackcock lek is a yearly courtship ritual involving a great deal of huffing and puffing as the males sort out their pecking order. The sounds of their skirmishing will drift across the loch long after the female osprey's arrival, merging with her own urgent calls. Her sudden appearance is the signal for nest building to begin in earnest, and there's nothing subtle about her mate's method of finding material. Unfortunately, this smash and grab technique doesn't always work. The nest site has been used many times before, and all the likeliest sticks have been snapped up in previous years. But the male is unwavering in his purpose, and this time he means business. The female also collects material for the treetop nest, but ospreys are equally at home on Mediterranean cliffs, Australian beaches, even suburban New York. But this wind-blown pine is a typical site for European ospreys, and nowhere else in the world do they arouse so much interest as here in Scotland. Each year, their return from Africa is given superstar coverage by the national press and television. The most famous pair, at Loch Garten, have been visited by close on 1 million people. And it's easy to see why 3 prime ministers and most of the royal family have enjoyed this unique spectacle. Sticks of 2 or 3 feet are ideal, but this one is about 7 feet long and requires all the strength of those immensely powerful legs and wings. It says a lot for the osprey's determination and stamina. It will take both birds a fortnight of fetching and carrying to complete their enormous eyrie. By the time it is finished, it will be one of the largest nests in the world, 3 feet deep and as big as a double bed. As the nest starts to take shape, the cup for the eggs is hollowed out and lined with grass, providing a soft and secure home for the increasingly broody female. One by one, the sticks are woven into place to withstand the wild Highland gales. A sudden storm can destroy a nest overnight. But the fact that ospreys are here at all after 50 years' exile is truly remarkable. The Royal Society for the Protection of Birds was determined that the first pioneers should survive and organized round-the-clock guards at the nest site. The result is one of the classic success stories of nature conservation, the original Loch-Garten pair having provided the nucleus of more than 20 pairs now breeding in Scotland. But unlike the much publicized Speyside eyrie and another in Perthshire, the rest are kept secret. It's now late April, and in the pines around the nest, another Highland bird, the crossbill, forages for seed-filled cones. The red squirrel prefers the fresh green shoots, a delicacy shared by the capercaillie, the giant grouse of the ancient Caledonian forest. The huge cockbird prepares to defend his territory against another aggressive male. Swollen with lust, popping with rage, the intruder marches forward. The dominant male must chase off his opponent, for it is here that he hopes to attract the female, and they always select the most impressive performer. Display encourages the females to mate, an event that is also imminent for the osprey. With the nest virtually complete, mating takes place with increasing frequency, perhaps 300 times in all, and continues until all 3 eggs are laid. During each brief mating, the male carefully closes his talons so as not to injure the female. Two eggs have already been laid. The last one will arrive tomorrow, but incubation has already started. From now on, the female will be on guard almost continuously until the young leave the nest at the end of August. But that is 4 months away. And as the last chilly days of April give way to the first real touch of spring, the autumn seems a long way off. Springtime brings a miraculous transformation to the loch. In place of ice crystals, marsh marigolds and mallard ducklings. The waters grow warmer, stirring the sluggish trout from their winter lethargy. For the ospreys, a time of plenty is at hand. With the female sitting tight, it's the male's task to hunt. With eyes 6 times the power of man's, he's looking for the telltale ripples of a rising trout. Surprise is his ultimate weapon. And at the last moment, he hurls his talons forward for the kill. Ospreys are equipped with reversible talons. Their feet armed underneath with short, sharp spikes. But even with these special refinements, a wriggling fish is hard to hold. Another special feature of osprey anatomy, the incredibly flexible carpal joints. The elbows in those majestic wings which give the bird extra power to pull clear of the water. Crows are a daily hazard for the osprey. Like all birds of prey, they have to endure the constant mobbing of these rapacious hustlers. If the crow is not harrying the osprey in the air, it is forever trying to steal or scavenge fish scraps, even from the edge of the nest. But nothing deters the hunting osprey in its single-minded pursuit of prey. And this bird is hungry. A devastating crash dive, and this time there's no escape from those terrible talons. A trout of 1.5 pounds in weight, just about as large as an osprey can handle. For a bird that only weighs 3 pounds, a big fish is hard to lift, even with those broad wings. So the trout is carried torpedo fashion to reduce wind resistance. Before delivering the fish to the nest, the male usually takes it to a favorite perch. But the sight of him tucking into fresh trout doesn't please the female. Those mad yellow eyes watch him closely. Her impatience is understandable. He may have been away for 3 to 4 hours. But she always gets her share in the end, and once delivered, takes her meal to a nearby perch. Now it's the male's turn to share the female's domestic duties. He carries out about 1/4 of the incubating, always through the daylight hours. Other families on the loch are already growing up. But for the ospreys, the mysterious alchemy of incubation will last right through May. As the drowsy days lengthen into summer, the increasing heat takes its toll. Life gets tedious. The inactivity long and laborious. The seemingly endless evenings of the Highland summer have already begun, and other wildlife can't wait for the ospreys. Only 32 days after laying their eggs, the crested tits are fledging. The pine woods are full of danger for the chicks, but this youngster is so eager to leave home, he's trying to sneak out by the back door. The tits raise their family in the peeling bodywork of a patriarch pine, excavating a snug hollow behind the flaky bark. Now their work is done. The youngsters emerge for their first flight, an event still 2 months away for the long-suffering ospreys. The first week of June, and within the eyrie a new life is just emerging. The first egg has hatched, but already a tragedy has occurred. One of the 3 eggs has failed. The cause? Pesticides. Like all predators, the osprey is perched precariously at the end of a food chain, a permanent hostage to its poisoned environment. The result? 1 thin-shelled egg. Such is the fine line between survival and extinction for this magnificent bird of prey. Setbacks are many, but with a growing family to feed, the male must range farther afield. The osprey is very much at home by the sea, and the great salt-smelling bays and inlets of the Highland shore are a favorite hunting ground. Those ospreys that have lost all their eggs or young, even those idling through from Scandinavia, gather in such places on their way south, for fish are abundant. As the tide creeps in under the distant hills, the osprey watches for flounders moving up on the flood to feed on lugworms in the shallows. Ospreys always hunt for the most easily caught fish, when they can be seen. Flounders are slow-moving and well camouflaged. But as they nudge at the bottom for worms, they release a tiny puff of mud, a smoke signal that tells the hovering osprey where the fish are feeding. It's an effective technique, but constant hovering burns up a lot of energy. So in rich feeding areas like this, where several ospreys are gathered, they have a communal hunting system. If one bird strikes lucky, the others home in and fish close by. In America and the Middle East, this behavior leads to colonies of up to 40 nests. But there are limits to being good neighbors. And this osprey has no intentions of giving up its regular perch for anyone. The male's return with a flounder is the signal for hungry greeting. The female is impatient, but the male, having carried the fish 12 miles back from the estuary, is a little reluctant to give up his catch. But eventually the fish is handed over, and the female proceeds to tear off tasty morsels for her chicks. The second chick hatched within a couple of days of the other. Now they are 3 weeks old and very peckish. The chick's somewhat reptilian appearance contrasts oddly with the tenderness of the female's maternal instincts. But this flurry of activity around the nest sometimes attracts the unwelcome attention of other ospreys. If the intruder approaches, the female becomes anxious and protects her brood with mantled wings. If the interloper persists, the male will chase it off. And the behavior has real survival value. In Scandinavian pine woods, ospreys have to contend with marauding eagle owls, which prey on helpless nestlings, even the adults themselves. As Scottish ospreys increase, intrusion becomes more frequent. The intruders are usually failed breeders or young ospreys looking for unoccupied territories. It's nature's way of ensuring that no eyrie is left empty for long. In high summer, the northern nights are brief, and the male hunts long into the evening. With a growing family, every second of daylight is precious, and if he returns empty-handed, operations will start again at the first glimmer of dawn. First light, and a flat calm. So the male changes his tactics and hunts from a handy tree. His dive success rate is usually only 1 in 3. If he fails, he must try again, however long it takes. The tufted ducks are not the only hungry birds around. While waiting for her mate to bring home the breakfast, the female takes the opportunity to carry out a few household repairs. It also seems a good time to teach the chicks something about nest building. They are now 5 weeks old. Demand for fish is at its peak, and the male will be immersed in water many times each day. He is a master of the elements, both air and water. His dense, oily plumage protects him from a soaking. A special membrane safeguards his eyes from the violent impact of the dive. His nostrils can be closed at will. To sustain his family, he must catch 6 trout a day. That's easy in good weather. But in Scotland, the sun doesn't always shine. The male takes shelter, and the chicks go hungry. With rain hammering the surface of the water, he is unable to see the prey. Fishing is impossible. Bad weather can be a serious threat to young ospreys. A cold chick is a dead chick, and the bedraggled female tries to keep them dry as best she can. With so many natural hazards, survival is always in the balance, and sometimes the odds are senselessly shortened by human disturbance. Loch-Garten ospreys have twice been robbed of their eggs. On another occasion, someone actually tried to chop down their nesting tree. Even quite innocent disturbance may cause the birds to leave the nest long enough for chicks to suffer. Ours are probably old enough to shrug off a soaking, but the female sits tight until the storm abates. As soon as the rain has stopped, the male wastes no time in setting off to fish. He knows from his 10 years' experience that it may not be easy. In cold weather, the fish lie deeper. To reach them, he must plunge more steeply. A power dive that will take him right under if necessary. At the moment of splashdown, he's traveling at 70 feet a second. Scotland never has been a happy hunting ground for the osprey. Europe offers a choice of 28 prey species. Scotland, only 6 or 7. The fishing can be poor, but one thing is changing all that. Trout hatcheries are a bird's best friend, and not only for the gulls. It's no accident that the resurgence of the Scottish ospreys has coincided with the restocking of lochs for trout fishing tourists. And the hatcheries are an additional bonus for any fish-eating bird. So ospreys are bad news for hatchery managers. Though their numbers are few, they are in direct competition with man, and shooting ospreys is against the law. So what should be done? Perhaps the simple answer is to cover the fish. That way, the temptation for wildlife to regard every hatchery as a free meal ticket would be removed, and a cause of conflict resolved. Open to the sky, they are an irresistible target. Rainbow trout have a much higher nutritional value than any other prey in Scotland. Without them, there would be fewer ospreys. So if a trout like this is worth £1 in cash, what price an osprey, flying free? How do you cost account the wealth of a nation's wildlife? The young are now full grown. It is 8 weeks since they hatched, and they're fully feathered. They are even old enough to feed themselves, but pickings are lean, and they fill in with leftovers between meals. With ospreys, little is wasted. At this stage, the male actually tries to reduce the supply of fish to the nest to encourage the young to fly. But some feeding must continue. The female still feeds her offspring, even though they are nearly as big as she is. So in spite of the male's desire to diminish his catch, he must keep up his relentless foraging to provide 4 or 5 fish a day. Mid-August, and the young birds watch with great interest as the male tries to coax them into the air. By now, he must have brought over 200 fish to the nest, but he is still reluctant to part with them. The young are ready to fly and have been ringed to tell us more about their problems of survival on migration. And there are all kinds of perils lying in wait. Of the 12,000 ospreys in Europe, a quarter will perish on the hazardous journey south. Every autumn, in Italy alone, 1,000 are shot. Even before they can fly, they are in danger. If a sudden gust should catch them off balance, they could be blown to the ground and devoured by foxes. It's a tense moment, but finally, he's free. Independent of the nest at last, but carrying a scrap of fish with him, just in case. For a first flight, it's quite impressive, but landing still requires a bit of practice, especially with only 1 foot. The young can fend for themselves now. Autumn has come, and already the female has begun the long journey south. Soon, guided only by instinct, each youngster will follow, charting the great unknown continents alone. But only one will survive to see the empty nest again. As the wild geese return from the Arctic to yelp a warning of winter's coming, the last of the young ospreys leaves the eyrie which has been its world for the past 3 months, to pursue its parents down the great, immemorial skyways to the sun, a 3,000-mile flight to Africa. This is the Gambia, West Africa. End of the line for some of the migrating ospreys and a far cry from the highlands. Here, day begins with dawn patrols of egrets setting out over the palm trees to their fishing grounds. West Africa is a paradise for fish-eating birds, though it has its own sinister hazards. Ospreys may not be a regular part of the crocodile's diet, but these vervet monkeys will certainly be in danger if they go down to the water's edge to drink. After the 2-month journey from Scotland, the ospreys quickly adapt to their new tropical home. They arrive in late October. It's the dry season, and the adult ospreys will rest here all winter. The youngsters even longer. They will share the malachite kingfisher's haunts until they are 2 years old, finding easy fishing in the pools between the baobab trees. For the fish eaters, living is easy. There is food for all in the mangrove creeks, and tinier titbits for the common sandpiper, which also breeds in Scotland, but is as much at home with the fiddler crabs. They wait below the master's table, hoping for a scrap or two, scavenged from the osprey's meal. Ospreys have been known to eat crabs, the sandpiper also when he can, but mullet is a more satisfying feast. An adult osprey needs only 1 fish a day, but nothing is wasted. Every scrap of fish is consumed and converted into the energy required to fuel that formidable frame. There will be little left for the crabs, waiting below. This, then, is the mysterious world of the mangroves, a habitat of vital importance to the ospreys. And like wilderness everywhere, it's under pressure. In many parts of Africa, large tracts of mangrove swamp have been cleared for agriculture, understandable in developing countries where hunger is an ever-present nightmare. What is far more disturbing is the highly questionable practice of sowing the seeds of silent spring in the Third World by selling pesticides banned in Europe. Happily, some of West Africa's most important mangrove swamps are now protected for the benefit of man and wildlife together. So here, at least, the mangroves still tiptoe down the brackish channels, and when the tide trickles in through the tangled stems, the osprey retires to a favorite stump in the center of his territory. But sometimes he encounters a little local competition. A haul of mullet, highly esteemed by the Gambians as a fish with a high nutritional value, second only to the flying fish, the osprey's favorite prey. So the osprey catches mullet in the mangroves at high water, flying fish at sea when the tide is out. This is where the osprey does most of his fishing during the winter vacation, on a coast fit for Crusoe, with only the clockwork sanderling for company. Flying fish abound in these warm Atlantic waters, and the clarity of the tropical sea makes them easy to catch as they bask or feed on plankton just below the surface. As usual, the local hoodlum is hanging around, the pied crow, which takes over from the Scottish hoodie or carrion crow as the villain who tries to bushwhack the osprey and rob him of his catch. Nobody loves the crow, but the osprey is greatly admired by the local fishermen. So much so that they use them as pointers to locate the shoals of fish and wear the remains of an osprey's catch as a good luck charm. Competition from the local fishermen is minimal, but just over the horizon looms a much more serious threat. Russian trawlers, using vacuum cleaner methods, ruthlessly mopping up the offshore fisheries. And that could soon put pressure on the inshore fishermen to increase exploitation of the waters where the ospreys feed. For the time being, life on the Sunshine Coast remains unchanged. But wholesale plundering of precious local resources could bring catastrophe, and a time when Gambians and ospreys have no fish to catch. Meanwhile, Africa continues to offer an idyllic existence in the sun. It's still a mystery why the ospreys leave at all. They should remain to breed. Instead, they forsake the gentle Gambia for a month-long odyssey many will not live to complete. Why they leave to face the rigors of the north can only be guessed at, and the Scottish spring is not always welcoming. But in spite of the blizzards and the perils of the journey, it's Scotland's good fortune that the ospreys still answer to ancient instincts. It's almost as if, like the wild Highland stag, they are drawn to places which are akin to their own fierce spirit. So the world of the osprey comes full circle. The old eyrie, wrecked by winter storms, must be repaired in readiness for a new family. It is a story as old as time, but this tale has a ring of hope. Globally, the osprey is doing well, and in Scotland, though its numbers are low, it is protected and increasing. In today's world, precious few creatures get a second chance and succeed, but the osprey is a born survivor.